A lot of folks ask me, does this apply to this problem or that problem? And I often answer yes. And it almost sounds like I'm saying that this is just applicable to everything, right? Which sounds like in life, few things work like that, right? It starts to sound like bullshit. But that's not the case with this. And today I want to explain why. So, what is the gist of Revive? Basically, what I'm saying is that the medical entire understanding of the human body is wrong. And that at the core, there's physics or biomechanics. We age and we die because of a collapse of the skull onto the brain, a collapse of the skeleton essentially like twists and contorts and that, displaces organs, but compresses organs. And that's why you get disease. And that this physics happens, one way it happens is mainly through this curve of Spee, right? So by flattening the curve of Spee. And as you age and you grind down your teeth and your teeth move, that curve of Spee flattens. In my view, that's the main reason why we age. This sounds kind of hard to believe, but if you take a step back, you think about it logically, like, why do we get disease? Why do we die? You can broadly bucket things into three buckets. One is genetics, right? Like certain things truly are genetic. Second is lifestyle, right? Like how you live your life, your diet. I bucket all that into lifestyle, how much exercise you do. And the third one is my physics. And then almost everything that impacts your health and when you're going to die, I would say broadly fit into one of those three buckets. And if we look at this, like I think genetics is just way overrated because you look at what we call genetic and it's often only a generation or two. So I've written an article before about how the way that genetics works is it works with evolution, right? There's natural selection. For something to be genetic and grow, in my view, it's almost counterlogical to say that something is genetic and yet it's blasted off in the last 50 years, as most of these genetic things like neurological disease and things like they say. Why? Because natural selection would kill it, right? If there's something that is genetic that is bad, the rule or law of natural selection by Darwin and all these folks says that that'll die off in a generation. What it doesn't do is kind of spike up over multiple generations. So those type of things, maybe their lifestyle, right? But if you look at lifestyle, there's tons of exceptions, right? Like honestly, like from the time I was a kid to now, our calorie consumption hasn't increased that much. Our lifestyle has changed, but not that much. And there's so many exceptions to what we believe with lifestyle, right? Like you'll find people that are in great shape that do no exercise, or you'll find obese people who do a ton of exercise and eat very healthy, and yet they're huge. My view is that about 98% of illness and death of natural cause is these physics, which, should kind of like perplex you because it goes completely counter to what humans believe currently. And additionally, I'd say that because this is physics, physics can be reversed because it's just physics, like it's a force. What I'm saying with Revive is essentially the counteracting of the physics that collapse the skull and the body. Now, are there other things that impact these same physics? There are, but I think a lot of them, like a lot of things that people tell me like are, not beneficial or they're actually bad for you. So for example, like palate expanders. So for me, that actually accelerates the whole collapse process because of what it does to the soft tissue. And you cannot just force structures in that way. Whereas things like face pulling, that actually stretches the soft tissue a bit, or mewing, for example. Like those things work well with Revive. So the way I look at it broadly is like you have things that violate these physics, you have things that accelerate the physics, and then you have things that have no impact, right? So things that violate are things like extractions and orthodontics, surgeries, whereas things that accelerate are things like mewing and yoga and face pulling, osteopathy. With things that have no impact are things like pharmaceuticals, the food you eat, right? Like there's some very small impact, but generally like, those things like chemicals cannot impact physics. There is no other physics by which the body operates. So people ask me like, oh, well, if you do this other thing, does that also work? Like these are the only physics by which the body collapses or resurrects itself. And I like to think of it almost like gravity, right? If you drop a ball from a roof of a building, there are going to be certain things that impact how fast that ball hits the ground. right? And that's going to be like how heavy is the ball, the shape of the ball, how high the roof is. And then there's going to be certain factors that play, like what color the ball is or its texture. And that is how I think you should think about this entire collapse process, right? It's a single law, kind of like gravity. Certain things will accelerate, whereas certain things will reverse and like have a negative impact, and certain things will just have no impact. Thank you.